Hi, I'm Cassam and this is Stefan from HeyUGuys. Hopefully you've already seen our non-spoiler review of the film Ghostbusters. Now we're going to talk about some of the things in it that can be considered as spoilers. So if you haven't seen the film yet, wait until you've seen it before you check the rest of this video out and check out our non-spoiler video. Stefan, I wanted to talk about Chris Hemsworth's character in this.
Yes.
He starts off as this dumb character basically who is the butt of a lot of jokes, and he is lusted after by Kristen Wiig. It's a very funny kind of side character. In a small dose, I think it works quite well. They play it for too long, and also by the second half of the film they completely undermine that element of it by making him possessed, and he becomes the main kind of villain for a certain portion of the film, and he just becomes Chris Hemsworth by that point, which is this stereotypical male lead, good looking, handsome, big guy who takes over everything and dominates the film, which kind of undermines the message I think they were trying to get across with the movie. Did you see it that way?
Well, I mean, I definitely agree that I felt they overplayed that one joke, which was that he was kind of blissfully kind of simple, you know, and he would, as a receptionist, he was terrible. I wouldn't hire him in a second. I do think they did play that for too long. I actually think, though, that then it's almost contradictory to then say if he does change character, because we're complaining that, you know, that joke was played on for too long, and then they did turn the character on its head. So in a way, that is a good thing. I think they did that. But I do think that one of the films this film was lacking, which is kind of indicative of the Chris Hemsworth character, was a proper villain. I don't think it was almost a bit too much of a flash in the pan, and also because we knew that he wasn't actually a kind of evil person. He was just being kind of possessed in that moment. I didn't fear it too much.
Sure.
So I do think that. I don't think he was. I think he's a quite flawed aspect of this movie. I do agree on that. Even though I preferred the film to you, I think that joke did go on for too long, and then when he did become a villain, I didn't really believe in it. But I don't know if it undermines the kind of the message of the movie. I think there's that. I mean, if anything, it kind of enforced it in one moment where he shouts to them, "Girls don't know how to shoot," and kind of kill ghosts. And obviously, I think they go on to prove that they can. So I think if anything, his character kind of, because he is such a big kind of burly kind of antagonist by the end of this movie, he actually he adds to their underdog status, because they have to then overcome him, you know, which they obviously do. So I don't know if it's undermining the message necessarily.
Sure. I'm glad you mentioned the villain element, because I didn't fully understand what the main villain's motivation was.
Yeah,
I mean, so basically it's this character who is instigating all these supernatural events from happening by laying devices on various ley lines across the city and causing various ghosts to appear. But why?
I'm not actually too sure. I mean, it was pretty much just humans versus ghosts, wasn't it? There didn't seem to be a kind of... and also, you didn't get a sense for the scope. I mean, obviously it's taking place in New York, and you've seen with so many films in New York when there's just people running through the streets, and there didn't seem to be anyone really around. So I didn't get a sense for the kind of the end of the world is nigh. It didn't seem like there was that much at stake. Yeah, it just felt like there was a few ghosts hanging around. We should probably get rid of them just for the sake of it. But it's true. I didn't get an idea that you know, if we don't kill these ghosts, then the whole world's going to, you know, crumble or anything like that. Sure. So no, that as antagonists go in this movie, I think it was quite weak. I think I enjoyed it more when it's just quite playful, quite irreverent. I thought the first kind of hour I much preferred to the final kind of third of the movie, where it was just, it didn't seem to be taking itself too seriously. It was something quite tongue-in-cheek about it, and it was just quite kind of entertaining in a way that was quite kind of unashamedly in its approach. But I thought that it just worked for me.
Yeah, I think the opening scene is great, which is the kind of setup to the first haunting that happens. Yeah, which is really funny. It's really scary. I think it captured exactly what I would have wanted from the film. But then you have the big set piece at the end, which again, the big ghost in that, and here comes a big spoiler, it's actually the logo of the Ghostbusters brought to life. Yeah. Did that work for you at all?
Because I mean, they were trying to find. It's funny because they were trying to find ways, obviously, to tie this in with the original. And I thought, you know, the way that when the guy drew it when he was doing that stuff on the subway.
Yeah, graffiti, yeah.
The graffiti, that's the word. And I thought that the way they kind of brought it in, it did feel a little bit forced. Same with the ghost, like you said at the end. But at the same time, I thought that's actually quite impossible to navigate for Phil. I mean, for Paul Feig. I mean, how do you? Because that's exactly where the line is between appeasing the old fans and appealing to new fans, and trying to find a way to balance between the two. And I think that's actually, that raises more questions over the whole validity of the film rather than the actual film itself. I think that was always going to be a problem in bringing in the logo and the slogan and stuff like that. But I think he did about as commendable a job as he probably could have, because I don't think it's that easy to do.
Okay, and also, so we have cameos from a lot of the original cast in this movie. Some of them are done really well, and some of them I thought were slightly wasted. So I thought the two best ones were Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray.
Yeah, they were enjoyable.
Sigourney Weaver turns up at the end of the film.
I prefer her cameo in Finding Dory.
Well, exactly, yeah. And again, what I didn't quite catch, so she is linked to Kate McKinnon's character in some way?
Yeah, that came in, that was quite difficult to get hold. I think, I agree, I think the Bill Murray cameo was my favourite. I think, but I quite like the Dan Aykroyd one.
Yeah, Ernie Hudson as well is quite amusing, but you kind of know when he's going to come in based on the characters in the film.
Yeah, you even had what did look like a sort of statue of Harold Ramis. Did
Yes,
you see
he
that
did.
in the
Yeah,
background?
and that's a good spot actually. Yeah, so they've got a little mention there. I was looking for Rick Moranis. He's not in it, unfortunately.
No, he's not in this.
But Janine is. You recognise her voice straight away. So
it's in a weird way that it's quite nice to have all of their sort of seals of approval. I mean, even though they are very brief, none of them are really used as a narrative device. They don't move the story forward.
No,
really.
I mean, I guess Bill Murray slightly.
Actually, no, Bill Murray. No,
yeah, he turns up as a cynic who initially comes in to debunk them, and then is exposed to one of the ghosts that they capture.
Yeah.
And I suspect what happens to his character, and I won't spoil that because that is quite a really big thing in there. But I think he insisted on that being written in the way that it is.
Oh, I'm sure he did. And what Bill Murray wants, Bill Murray probably gets. I'm
Absolutely,
sure.
in this case. Finally, there is a post-credit sting, which is right at the end of the credits. Were you excited by that? Because basically it sets up the sequel. Leslie Jones's character overhears on one of the recordings that they've taken the name Zool, and that implies that we're going to see. Oh, you haven't seen that?
I haven't seen it. This is news to me.
Spoiler for Stefan there. It sets up basically a sequel. Would you be interested in seeing that?
I would be interested in seeing that. I mean, I don't think, I feel quite similarly about sequels I felt about this one, which is that it doesn't need to exist. There should be more original stories. This is my reaction just to any reboot of any franchise. It doesn't need to exist. The sequel does not need to exist. But at the same time, if it does, and it is as kind of entertaining as I found this film to be, then why not? You know, I wouldn't say I'm actively looking forward to it, or that I'm really hoping that one does come into fruition. But if it did, I'd happily go along and see it, and I'm sure I'd laugh enough to justify the fact that it was made, because obviously how much I laugh is the model of how much. No, but I feel that I would see it, and I'm sure I would enjoy it, but it's not the end of the world if it was made.
Okay, excellent. And finally, I don't think this film is going to do that well at the box office. What do you reckon?
It's hard to know. I mean, when you have a film that's been talked about this much, to this extent, I think it's in the top 10. The trailer was in the top 10 most disliked YouTube videos.
I think our Warcraft one was in there as well.
Our Warcraft was in there, yeah. This one will probably be just creeping in. No, and it's very hard to judge. Is that going to breed a lot of kind of attention to a point where everyone's going to go and see it so they can have an opinion? Or are those people who actually disliked it, do they really dislike it enough that they're just going to say, I don't want to see this? And I sadly think it might be the latter. I'm not 100% sure this will make a huge amount, but I do hope I'm proved wrong, just because I feel there have been some quite backwards views when it comes to why this sequel is a problem. I think, you were saying before that any kind of apprehensions you have are based purely on the fact that it's a reboot of a franchise that doesn't need to be rebooted. But there are people out there that have different views that based more around the gender, obviously the protagonists. So there was a little part of me that wanted to do well, just to say, take that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you on that aspect. I kind of do want it to do well, just to say, fingers up, basically, the naysayers. But at the end of the day, it is a sequel, it is a reboot, I beg your pardon, and it does kind of tread the same lines that we've seen in the past. It's got a lot of the problems that reboots and sequels have, and I think that might put people off. But we'll wait and see.
Well, I'm just surprised when people leave this and say they absolutely loved it, as much as I'm surprised as people that left and say they really didn't like it. I think this, for me, is quite emblematic of Paul Feig's career, which is, The Heat and Spy. I think they're perfectly kind of good comedies that do a job, but they don't really transcend. Obviously Bridesmaids.
They're not Bridesmaids.
They're not Bridesmaids. But I think everything since Bridesmaids have been on a kind of similar level, which is, it's quite funny, it's okay, and I think this is in that bracket. So I'm quite surprised that if people gave it 5 stars, as much as I would if people gave it 1 star. I'm very much on the fence, which is the worst place to be, but I found a lot to like about this movie, but I found quite a lot misfired, and it was a solid 3-star film in my eyes.
Yeah, so you give it 3 stars, I give it 2 stars. Basically 2.5 is where it probably deserves to sit. And any other 2.5 star film would probably just come and go. but this one is so talked about that it will go either way. It will either do really well or not. And we'll just have to wait and see how it does.
We'll find out.
So there you go. Thanks for joining us. Check out the other video we did, which is a review of the movie, and join us next time when we'll be talking about the latest films that are out.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey, you guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yeah.
Nice.
Hey!